Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Wider Wellness Virtual Summit. I'm so glad you're all here because you are in for an amazing lecture. Caroline Golmick, who is a certified natural health professional. She's also on her way to become a CHHP and then a board certified doctor of naturopathy. She is an incredible practitioner, a wonderful friend, and just an overall great person. So, Caroline, we're so glad you're here from Terrain Health in Pittsburgh, PA. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Tracy. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here today. So Tracy mentioned I'm a certified natural health professional. I have a natural health practice in Elwood City, Pennsylvania. It's called Terrain Natural Health. And my focus for today is a discussion on the importance of our foundations of health. It's so easy to overcomplicate things when it comes to our health, when in reality, it's very simple. The foundations of our health are eating real food, drinking enough water, getting sunshine, getting out in the sun, breathing fresh air, moving our bodies, getting enough sleep and rest, a spiritual walk with Jesus, having balanced emotions, and then ensuring that our detox pathways are all working appropriately as they were designed. And the foundations of our health are the building blocks that create our whole being, our mind, our body, and our spirit. And those have to all be in balance for us to have actual overall health. The focus on the foundations, or the lack of a focus on these foundations, are what create our health from the inside out. And that refers to our terrain, hence the name of my practice, Terrain Natural Health. And there was a French scientist, Dr. Béchamp, who developed the terrain theory. And the terrain theory basically states that germs can't cause infection or disease unless the condition of the body allows it. In other words, the healthier your terrain, the less hospitable you are to germs, infections, disease, or viruses. And this is in opposition to the Western medicine view currently of the germ theory, which essentially believes that we have to fear the germ and eliminate it or hide from it at all costs. And I've seen it before shown that there's two fish tanks, right? And how will we protect the fish in the fish tank from all of the bacteria and the growth and the algae that's going to eventually grow on the inside of that bowl? And the germ theory, which would say hide from the germ, would put the fish in a little baggie to protect it from all of that grime that's going to grow. Whereas the terrain theory would say, just clean the inside of the tank. Just keep it clean. Then you don't have to worry about all of that growth. And so that's why I love the terrain theory. One, it makes sense. And two, it provides us with hope. You know, we don't have to hide away in a bubble to avoid every germ, and we don't have to inject our health with a needle. But we do have to focus on the strength of our terrain. And so that gives us responsibility when it comes to our healthcare. Anytime we're talking about health at my practice, the goal is to bring both hope and empowerment with the education that I'm giving. And, you know, I think the more that we can grab hold of our health, the less fear we have to have. And there's a freedom that comes with knowledge, but there's a responsibility too. And it's a good reminder that we don't have to be prisoners to our bodies. We don't have to fear our genetics. And we also don't have to fear every germ or virus that's swirling around us. So before we start dissecting the foundations of our health, I'm going to share a short healing testimony that unfolded over the last 5 years with my husband that affected our family in a great way. When he was 10, he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And if you're not familiar, that diagnosis is a term for an autoimmune condition, which refers to chronic inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract. And the symptoms that come along with that are generally diarrhea, blood in the stool, severe cramping, an urgency to pass a bowel movement, sometimes fever, weight loss, a lot of stress. And so you get the picture there. So Scott was on some pretty intense medications for about 15 years. And around 5 years ago, we started noticing some changes in Scott, some inconsistent mood patterns, some rashing that started showing up on his body. And looking back now, it's easy to see that his mind, body, spirit balance was really out of whack. And so we had a few divine conversations with several people, and that's just the way that God works. And we took it as a nudge, slowly into this natural realm. And so I just started praying, God, just put the right people and resources in front of me, because I didn't know much about this field. I knew that this medication he had been on was suppressing his immune system, but I really didn't know much. And in the mail, shortly after, we received the product insert for the medication he was on. And I'm sure we got that every 8 weeks, every time he had an infusion, but we had never paid attention. And this time we did. And so we opened it up, and I'm not kidding you whenever I say that, it was as large as our dining room table. And so we started reading through some of the contraindications, the adverse reactions, warnings, and we found pretty quickly that the top 2 warnings are, they knew that it was now causing lymphoma, and which is a cancer, and also it made you at a much higher risk for infection because it's suppressing your immune system. And so a coworker of mine had a friend who was a naturopathic doctor, the one and only Dr. Tracy Straub, who she connected me with, and that changed our whole lives. So Dr. Tracy, if you're still there, thank you for all that you've done for us. And we talked to her about our desire. We weighed the risk and reward, and then we prayed about it, and we felt peace. And so we made the move toward addressing more than just the symptoms, more than just removing the batteries from the fire alarm that was going off in his body and suppressing the symptoms like his medication was doing. We wanted to hunt down the fire and put out the fire at the source. And when our body gets the support it needs at the source, it is able to heal itself. We were well made, absolutely. So we are now 5 years later, and I'm excited to share that Scott is symptom and medication free now for 5 full years as of Valentine's Day. And more than just changing what was going into Scott's body food-wise, there truly had to be a mental and a spiritual shift there for him as well. Sometimes when we go through something that's really taxing, whether it be physically or emotionally on our body, after so long, we sometimes just tend to wear that. It becomes comfort. It's like a cloak, and we feel comfortable wearing it around, and it starts to define us. And for my husband, he went through this diagnosis at some pretty formative years of becoming a young man. And so for him, he became this diagnosis. They were one and the same. Scott was Crohn's disease. But through his healing journey, I realized that there were 3 steps to healing. And I now encourage every one of my, each one of my clients in these 3 steps. And step 1 is we have to be willing to pray and believe for healing. Step 2 is we have to be willing to make radical life change. And step 3 is we have to be willing to separate from our diagnosis. And sometimes that third one is the hardest one, because after so many years of being a part of something, of being sick, you have to be eventually willing to say, no more, I'm done with it. And that's kind of the hardest part, is that separation. So that's just a little bit of this testimony, and I'll come back to it a few times when we start talking about gut health in depth. So we'll start with the foundations, and let's start with food. I found this too is more of a mindset shift than a physical change. Now, certainly we're changing what we're putting into our mouth, but it starts up here. When we start talking about food in regards to our health, we often feel restricted. We feel chained by a diet, and we want to be free to eat whatever we want, whenever we want, right? But Romans 12:2, which is my favorite scripture of all time, is do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you can test and approve what God's will is for your life, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So let's renew our mind about what freedom is. Freedom is choosing to eat something or choosing not to. Bondage, or being enslaved by our food, is when we feel like we have to have it. We can't say no. We have to cave to our cravings. So we have to have a little bit of a paradigm shift here of what freedom is and what the bondage is when it comes to overeating. And some people feel bound to a diet. I don't really even like talking in regards to the terms of diet, because I think diet often equals short-term, strict, religious, have to stay in this box. I can't have that. I'm not allowed. Whereas lifestyle shift often is more equivalent to a long term. It's being able to see beyond your fork, have a marathon view perspective on your life as opposed to a sprint, and say, hey, these are my goals for a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And will what I'm about to put in my mouth support those goals? Does it support my goals and serve me well? And if the answer is no, then you have a decision to make and you have a responsibility. You have to ask yourself, do I like food more than I like health? And maybe you sit there and you say yes. And again, that's your prerogative and your choice, but you get to choose. Most of us, unfortunately, don't take our health seriously until it affects our activities of daily living. We're willing to give money to research and we're willing to march in the name of a disease, but are we really willing to consider where these are stemming from and getting to the heart of that and put the hard work in there at the start? I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. He's a world-renowned financial guru, and he says, live like no one else, so later you can live like no one else, essentially. So pay off your debts now and save your money and don't act like you're rich when you don't have money now, so that later on you don't have to be enslaved to debt. Well, I think it applies here as well. Live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later. Make the decisions now, because you'll either pay for your health now or you will pay for it later. And you can say, when I'm in my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, do I want my whole schedule revolving around going to the doctor's office? If the answer is no, then make changes now. You have the opportunity right now. There's 3 factors to your overall health. One is genetic susceptibility. You can't control that. You can't control your genes, where you came from. Environmental triggers, that's hard to control. It's hard to control the air that we're breathing, the water that we're drinking, and to some extent, what's been sprayed on our food. But when it comes to the third component, which is diet and lifestyle, it is totally in our control. So that one is the key. Control the controllables and leave the rest to God. Food is often just a loaded subject in general, just because we have such an attachment to food, whether it's emotional or just because it does taste so darn good, or for some of us, it may actually be an addiction. But that is what ends up being that baggage we carry around. And we tell ourselves, oh yeah, I can't say no. I just can't say no to a cookie. Well, you can. You can say no. Let's talk about what real food is, because that's what this first foundation is about, is eating real food and what its purpose is for our overall health. So what's real food? If it flew through the air, if it ran through the field, if it fell from a tree, if it swam through the ocean, if it grew from the ground, that is real food in its whole form. God created us, and then he created everything to sustain us. And so whole real food is processed or refined as little as possible. It's in its whole state: a fruit, a vegetable, nuts, seeds, fatty fishes, lean meats, grass-fed beef, and they're free from additives and other artificial substances. Foods that are processed and include chemically altered ingredients, preservatives, artificial flavors, and natural ingredients that you would normally eat are not food. So we have to start using the right terminology. Are we eating food or are we eating not food? And unfortunately, the standard American diet is appropriately titled the SAD diet, because a lot of what we're eating is not real food, and our body isn't seeing it as food. Even though it's been packaged and marketed to us as food, it's not real food. If you look at the label and you don't know what an ingredient is, it's likely not food. It's not real food. If there's a long list of ingredients, it's likely not real food. And even if there is some real food component in there, it's been so heavily processed that we lose the nutritional value that was once there. We also find that whole real foods tend to be anti-inflammatory to our body. And so they help lower the inflammation in our body. And like I mentioned before, that you can find that in your organic fruits, your vegetables, your whole grains, your beans, your nuts, your seeds, fresh herbs and spices, if it grows. Pro-inflammatory foods, or foods that trigger an inflammatory response in your body, are sugar, gluten, wheat, white bread, pasta, dairy, vegetable oil, fried foods, processed meats, grain-fed meats, artificial sweeteners, chemical additives. And if you sit down and write everything that you ate for the last week, you can start reflecting and say, am I eating real food? And if I throw what I just wrote down that I ate out into the yard, will it reproduce? If the answer is no, then as opposed to saying I'm never allowed to have any of this non-food again, as Tracy would say, crowd out the bad with good. I love that. It's not necessarily always what we need to take out of what we're eating. It's what we need to make sure that we're getting. If you want a slice of pizza, great, but also make sure on your plate that you have some real food there too. Cut up some vegetables, have a little bit of a side salad. Make sure you're getting the nutrients and the minerals that you need to sustain life in your body. Okay, so with Scott's diagnosis, the source of his issue was in his gut. And what is our gut? It's our gastrointestinal tract, which includes our stomach and our intestines. And when we're talking about our gut, we are always talking about also our microbiome. And our microbiome is a community of microbes that literally houses trillions of good and bad bacteria, trillions of viruses and fungi that make it up and live in our digestive system. And they're all told, they can weigh between 2 and 5 pounds, which essentially end up together functioning as another organ in our body. The good gut bacteria helps our body create an immune response to invading pathogens. It helps keep bad bacteria at bay and in check. It helps produce vitamins and nutrients, protect against carcinogens, which are cancer-causing agents. It helps us to fight urinary tract infections, respiratory infections. They help to reduce our stress hormone cortisol. And they also help to ensure that we're removing heavy metals from our body. And when bad bacteria takes over, that's whenever we give a home to disease and infection. So what we're aiming for is diversity in our microbiome, which we achieve through the food that we eat, the rest that we get, the bacteria that we're exposed to, our stress levels, and taking in fermented foods that have trillions of good probiotics, as well as sometimes it is necessary to take a probiotic supplement. When we take a round of antibiotics, it can kill off the bad bacteria, but it also kills off the good gut bacteria as well. And that bad bacteria that gets killed off can mutate and it can take over. And when that happens, that leads to inflammation and disease in our body. So we always need to be replenishing and feeding our good gut bacteria. That bacteria that we need, it's everywhere. It's on us. It's in us, it's on every surface, it's in the air. And right now, especially, we're spending so much time sanitizing everything because of the bad virus or the germ or the bacteria that's around. But we haven't really considered the other side of that. When there's good bacteria around us, it benefits us. And so we need that. We can't be killing off all of the bacteria around us all the time, or we're going to be creating these super bugs and killing off all of our good gut bacteria. I had read that when we spend a significant period of time around someone who has a lot of diverse and good gut bacteria, it brings who you spend your time with to a whole nother level, because they can actually affect us, especially if they're making our food. So if they have a lot of good gut bacteria and they're touching your food and then you're eating it, it can actually positively affect you in your own health. And some researchers have said that around 90% of disease can be traced back to our gut health and our microbiome. So this is an important factor for us in our overall health. There are more bacteria in our intestines than there are cells in our body. And they work to help seal the gut lining and then keep disease-causing bacteria from sticking to our intestinal walls and eventually making out into our bloodstream. So I like to say, our intestinal walls, it should be real tight like this. And then there should be a real nice mucus layer here, so that as your waste is making it through its intestines, it's not making it out into your bloodstream. But unfortunately, we overuse antibiotics, we have vaccines, we have toxins in our air, in our food, in our water. And over time, that real nice mucus layer starts breaking down. And then eventually those real tight junctions start opening up a bit. And so you can see these little holes in here that eventually become its increased permeability, or sometimes you might hear the term leaky gut. It's the proteins, pathogens, toxins that should be kept within our intestines make it out into our bloodstream and into our lymph system, and that triggers our immune system, and that causes inflammation. And it tells our body, hey, attack. You need to be attacking this. That's why a lot of us, or many, might see food allergies come later in life. It's because over time, their intestines have become increasingly more permeable. And now these proteins from the foods that they're eating are making it out into the bloodstream. And they've been taught, hey, attack when you come in contact with this. So the next time someone eats that thing and it makes it out into their bloodstream, the body already thinks, hey, we need to attack this. We've already been told that we need to attack. Our body's smart. So we just need to support it well. Our gut health and the presence of inflammation in the body is the leading cause of issues that we are facing today with physical and mental health. You've probably heard that our gut is our second brain, or you get a gut feeling. Well, it's because at least 80% of our serotonin, which is our feel-good hormone, is and affects our mood, is found in our gut. And so whenever our balance in our gut is off, it affects our balance up here. When we have inflammation down here in our gut, we're going to have inflammation up here. It's going to affect our neurotransmitters, and it's absolutely going to affect our mood. It's going to give us that foggy, lethargic feeling. It's going to give us that hyperactivity feeling. It's going to give us that depressed feeling. And we often jump straight to here, our mental health, but we often bypass where a lot of that is beginning, which is in our gut. And so that's where we have to put our focus. What worked for us with Scott, I'd like to just share some specifics, because for anyone who's listening that might have a similar diagnosis or having similar digestive issues, this will also benefit you. We worked immediately to eliminate gluten, dairy, and processed sugar from our diet. So that was all the white breads, the white sugars, the white milks. We cut cheese, anything with wheat or rye. We worked to remove. We also eliminated processed foods from our intake. And yes, we did eliminate, but we also added in many things that we were neglecting. So we added in a lot of organic fruits and vegetables, like 10 servings a day. We added in bone broth every single day. If you don't have bone broth in the house, run out and get it. Keep it around all the time. It's a really good gut healer, soother. Has the L-glutamine in there, collagen. Treat it like a medicine. Drink a cup of it every day. You won't be sorry. We added in quinoa, and then we did have to supplement. So we added in a strong probiotic for Scott because we needed to replenish that good gut bacteria. We added turmeric into his intake every day to help fight inflammation. And it's from the Lord. It is the strongest anti-inflammatory on earth. It grows. And so if you can get some turmeric into if you just want to spice all your food with it, vitamin D3 and a B complex vitamin. Some of those were the focus that we had for Scott. And I just saw someone here just ask, how do you make bone broth taste good? We seasoned it. So we did some Himalayan sea salt, some pepper, sometimes a little bit of lemon, turmeric, and a little bit of garlic and onion powder. So season it till you like it. It doesn't need to be work to have it. Make it till you like it. We essentially followed an anti-inflammatory diet. And this may not be might not be the most professional suggestion, but if you have Pinterest, utilize it. You type in anti-inflammatory diet and then type in some food you have in your house, and there are hundreds of options out there for you on foods that you can make. And that's how we started to navigate, and the whole world opened up. As opposed to us feeling restricted by this transformation of lifestyle and diet change, we started to feel empowered by it because we were getting to try new things that we had never tried. And then we realized very quickly how much better we felt. When it comes to eating real food, we also have to bring into consideration the importance of our ability to digest, assimilate the nutrients from the food that we're eating, and then eliminate the waste from our body. And it starts right here. It starts with eating mindfully and chewing our food. Sometimes we're like starving dogs, right? We sit down in front of a TV or in our phone. We don't even consider what we're about to eat. We chew it once or twice and then we swallow it whole because we're so hungry. And this is really our first line of digestion, of breaking down the food. And so we have these digestive enzymes, amylase, that helps cover our food with our saliva. And you really should chew like 10 to 15 times every bite of food that we have. And it might seem overboard, but the more work you do here, the less work you're going to have in your stomach that needs to also continue to break down with that digestion process. So when we start chewing, we cover it with enzymes, it starts triggering to our stomach. Hey, get the juices flowing down there. Get that enzymatic activity going. Get your hydrochloric acid, your bile in there to help break down this food so that when it makes it into our intestines, it's completely broken down. When digestion isn't operating at full capacity, there is a trickle-down effect. And so we have these built-in detox pathways that God gave us, and that's our bowels, our urinary tract, our lungs, our lymphatic system, and our skin. And our bowels, that first one, includes our digestion process. And when that is suffering, the other systems are going to get affected. And it becomes this cascade or this waterfall of other symptoms that will start showing because it's starting to put a toll on our other detox pathways. When our stomach, so when we swallow our food whole, basically, and it gets to our stomach and it takes hours or days to break down that extra food, sometimes it gets sent into our intestines in larger particles of food. So it's almost like setting food out on your counter for days and days and days. What's going to happen? Eventually, fungus and mold's going to grow, and then something's going to come eat it, something you probably don't want on your counter. And the same can go for our intestines. We let undigested food particles sit in our intestines. Fungus, candida, yeast will grow on that food, and then that becomes food for the parasites, and they start taking over. They start taking over our system. So if we don't want yeast, if we don't want candida, if we don't want parasites or heavy metal toxicity, then we have to make sure that we are first and foremost digesting our food. And for a lot of us, that means that we have to take a digestive enzyme, especially as we're getting older, because we create less enzymes. Unfortunately, the food that we're eating now is a lot different than it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And also when we have food in our fridge and it sits for a week before we eat it, it slowly is losing its enzymatic activity. And not to mention we're eating not food, which has no enzyme, no natural enzyme to begin with. And so we're not helping ourselves a lot there. So many of us can benefit from an enzyme. And I'll just throw this in here that after we finish, if anyone wants to check out my site, it's terrainnaturalhealth.com, TERRAIN, and I do Zoom and in-person consultations. And so if you wanted to follow up and discuss any of the things that we're talking today, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, so where are we? We're talking about, in the small intestine. So in our small intestine, this is where we start absorbing the nutrients from the food that we're eating. So even if we're eating a lot of real food and we're feeling really good about our food intake, if we're not able to digest and then assimilate the nutrients from that, we're still going to become malnourished. So it's really important that we're able to assimilate those nutrients into our body. And then the undigested portions will then go onto our large intestine, which is responsible for absorbing water and electrolytes. And our good gut bacteria then turns that liquid waste into what becomes our feces or our bowel movement. But it's also where our body produces vitamin K, B1, 2, 6, 12, and biotin. And that's some of those vitamins that we need for our mental and our nervous system. Okay. So when I meet with clients, we always test pH levels. So what we're testing is the rate of digestion of the upper and the lower tract. And so what we're looking to find is we want our food to be moving quickly enough through our system that it's not sitting, it's not reabsorbing toxins into our body, but it's not moving so quickly that we're not actually digesting, assimilating the nutrients, and being able to turn that into fuel or energy for our body. The second, which comes right in hand in conjunction with the first of eating real food, the second foundation of health is water. And, we can't live without it, certainly, but because it's so accessible to us, I think we often overlook its importance and vitality in our lives. If you're thirsty, you need to drink water. If you're super tired, you need to drink some water. If your lips are chapped, drink water. If your skin feels dry, if you're constipated, if your eyes are dry, you need to drink more water, because we are made up of roughly 2/3 of water. Our lungs and our brain are both 80% water. And so when we are made up of it and we're not getting that very thing that we're created of, we're gonna feel the effects. Of course, we're gonna feel tired. We're gonna feel lethargic. We're gonna feel moody. We're gonna feel bloated and swollen, because our body's going to hold on to every little bit of water that it can. And it's also going to pull it from places where it should be, like in our joints, the lubrication in our joints. So we start getting knee pain or having neck pain or vertebrae pain in our back. It can often be we just need to eat more real food and we need to drink more real water. And every time we take a drink of water, we're transporting valuable minerals and nutrients to our cells. It's what brings life to our cells. And it also helps remove waste from our cells, which then we release through our sweat, our urine, and our feces. Water helps us to regulate our body temperature. It delivers oxygen all over our body. It helps moisturize our skin and our mucous membranes. It's a shock absorber for our brain and our spinal cord, and it helps manufacture hormones and neurotransmitters. So what should you be doing? We should all be drinking half of our body weight in ounces of water, and sometimes more. You know, if you're working out or it's really hot out, you need to drink more than that. If you're pregnant and you have double the blood volume that you would normally have, you need more water. If you're breastfeeding, you need more water. If you're sick, you need to drink more water. And if you're drinking coffee throughout the day, first of all, drop it down to like a cup. But if you have an 8 to 10 ounce cup of coffee, that's a diuretic. You need to also then add in that extra amount of water. So I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with a client and they say, oh, I have a cup or two of water a day. And it's like, of course you feel terrible. We need water. We're made up of the water. You need to eat more real food and we need more water. A good indicator of hydration is take a look at your urine. We want it to be like a straw pale yellow. If it's really dark brown or really dark yellow, if you're having burning or irritation or ongoing kidney stones, or when you stand up, if you're feeling lightheaded or you get headaches all the time, before popping a Tylenol that's going to interfere with your glutathione production, take a big drink of water. Start there. Start with the basics. Get back to your foundations, but start small. If you're not drinking anywhere near half of your body weight in ounces of water right now, start small because we don't want to overwhelm your kidneys. So start with an extra 8 ounces this week and then add until you end up at about half of your body weight in ounces of pure filtered water. All right, moving on. Air. I know some of these can seem silly to discuss, but they're just oh so important to our overall health. Our very purpose of breathing is so our circulatory system takes oxygen through the body and then brings carbon dioxide, which is our waste gas, back to our lungs so that we can breathe it out. So this bringing in oxygen and waste out is crucial to our overall health. It's our first line of defense in bringing clean air to our cells and removing waste from them. Oxygen helps clean our body. And when we can support the systems that we have in place, our God-given systems, we don't have to fear the world around us. We just need to eat more real food, drink enough water, start breathing some fresh air. Inhaling fresh air helps clear our lungs and enables us to take deeper, longer breaths of air. And it also increases the amount of oxygen to our body cells and brain, which then translate for us to greater energy and clarity of mind. So if you're having a particular time of day where you're just feeling like you need a pick-me-up and you're about to turn to a cup of coffee or a stimulant, instead, take 5 minutes and do some box breathing, which is breathing in, inhale for 5 seconds, fill your diaphragm fully, hold for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds. And 5 minutes will feel like a long time, but it will start to oxygenate all these areas of your body, including your brain. There are some therapists that spend their whole first session with their clients, a whole hour, doing breathing techniques because they know that if they can start bringing oxygen to replenish the cell growth in parts of their areas of their brain, that they can sometimes recover memories that have been suppressed, and then they can work through those issues at their therapy session. So this is something we should be building into our everyday, whether it's first thing in the morning, you can do a little bit of your prayer or meditation during that, and before you go to bed at night. Every day, about 700 billion cells wear out in our body and have to be replaced. And without oxygen, we can't build new cells. And without carrying the dead cells out, then there will be a backup, and that makes our bodies toxic. So if cells are old and weak, that's where a virus and bacteria can take up residence. But if we're constantly regenerating and clearing out, then there's nowhere for disease to live. This is why antioxidants are so important. You hear that word, and a lot of that we can get through our food. It's what allows our body to use oxygen more efficiently so that it can enter the bloodstream. And plants have their own antioxidants to fight off disease. So when we eat fresh, organic fruits and vegetables, we get their antioxidants to help usher oxygen into our own cells. And I will say that anything that interferes with our ability to bring in oxygen and breathe out waste is detrimental to our health. There's no other way to swing it. We need to bring in as much air as possible and breathe out as much waste. And anything that's interfering with that is not helpful to our overall health and is not going to serve our health goals. Okay, so the next foundation, so we have eating real food, drinking enough water, breathing enough fresh air. The next is sun, getting out into the sun. The sun is the giver of life and health for both plants and people. It sets our internal clock. It helps with our vitamin D production, and vitamin D helps our body absorb calcium, which then helps with our bone growth and health. And it also helps us fight chronic inflammation. What we should be aiming for is 20 to 30 minutes a day in the full sun. And that can give us nearly a whole day's worth of our vitamin D that we need via skin absorption. It can be difficult in Western Pennsylvania to make that happen, but I do see the sun is shining right now. So when we're done, just go run outside and bask in the glory of the sun. It's best in the morning. You don't have to worry so much about getting burnt. Between 8 and 10 a.m., go out and cover as much of your body in sun as possible, and that will get your circadian rhythm started. It tells your body, hey, release the serotonin. It's morning. Wake up. Feel good. And then at night, if we can go outside and you can see the sunset, it also is a signal to your body to say, okay, serotonin, turn off, and here comes the melatonin. It will help us fall asleep and stay asleep. Sunlight actually cues areas in our retina, which trigger the release of serotonin, and it turns off the melatonin in the morning. So if you feel like you just can't wake up in the day, go out and sit in the sunshine. Tell your body it's daytime. It also will help you counteract depression and helps you feel relaxed and happy. How much skin should we bare? As much as you possibly can, Haley. If you have a little bit of privacy, go out bare. I would go out buck naked if you could. Unfortunately, I do not have that privacy at my house. And so I have to cover up parts of me, but get as much sun on as much of you as possible. Studies have shown, and I'm sure you have all heard this because there's been a whole lot of talk about vitamin D, around the coronavirus. But studies show that those people who have healthy levels of vitamin D are less likely to suffer infections, including upper respiratory infections. So we have to ensure, a lot of us have to supplement vitamin D because of where we live and just because of the nature of a lot of our work that puts us indoors and not out in the sun. A lot of us do need to be supplementing with some vitamin D. So I will throw that in there. Sunlight can also help us with skin conditions that we have, whether it be some psoriasis or eczema, jaundice or acne. And obviously you don't want to burn your skin. That's why first thing in the morning is best, and work your way up. Start in 5-10 minute increments until you get to your 20 or 30 minutes a day. I'm going to move right over into sleep because the sun is what helps us wake up and know that it's daytime. And when we are getting adequate sun and our serotonin production is what is working well and being released, then our melatonin is more likely to be working and being produced. So with our sleep, why is sleep important? It's important because when we're sleeping, our body is recovering and repairing and detoxifying. When God created us, he created basically a built-in recharge system. And if you really think about it, it's so wild. We just lay down at night and then we can just fall asleep. And then we just lay there and we recover. Our body recovers. But so many of us put that at the bottom of our priority list because we have things to do and it's really important. I can live on 3 hours of sleep. You can't live well on 3 hours of sleep because you're not giving your body enough time to rejuvenate and recharge and recover and repair. It's when our body sorts and processes the day's info. It's when we create long-term memories. It's what balances our hormones. It helps regulate our emotions, flush out dead cells so we don't become toxic. And it's our time to become renewed. So it needs to move a lot higher up on our priority list. When we have too little sleep, it's a lot easier to catch colds. It can lead to digestive gut issues, headaches, migraines, weight gain, when you're feeling irritable. And the sleep disturbances have been identified as a primary drive of Alzheimer's disease. Sleep is considered the potent master switch of the immune system. Poor sleep leads to an increase in the stress hormone cortisol, which leads to inflammation. It's a dangerous cycle because when you don't sleep, it causes stress. So you create the stress hormone, and then that stress hormone makes it harder for you to get good rest. And so we have to break that cycle. So what can help us get enough sleep? Aligning with the sun cycle. As I said before, get out in the morning, get out and watch the sunset at night. It will help regulate our melatonin and serotonin production. And getting EMF, your phones, out of your room at night. You know, our phones, they ping to towers, right? To say, hey, Caroline is in Elwood City right now, pinging to the towers. Every time they ping, they're sending these electromagnetic waves that interfere with our sleep. So having our phone charging next to us in our room is not wise. Get it out of your room. You don't need it in there. If it's your phone, your alarm get an alarm clock. Use that instead. Another technique can be that breathing that we talked about, that deep breathing, that box breathing of 5 in, hold, 5 out, hold. And one good technique is only to count your exhales and count till you get to 5 exhales and then start back over at 1. You'll become so intertwined in the counting of the 5 seconds in, holding for 5 seconds out, 1, in, out, 2, that you can sometimes get out of that spiral of your mental chatter that's what's keeping you from sleep. And ultimately, our physical rest can manifest when we are mentally and spiritually resting. But when we're battling emotions like fear and anger or anxiety, that's what can help, what ends up assisting in robbing us of our sleep and ultimately robbing us of our healing. Okay, I have a few minutes left. Movement, exercise. Why is it important? Because it is responsible for lymph flow and blood circulation. And lymph, which is right below the skin, it's a fluid that aids our immune system in removing and destroying waste and dead blood cells. It also helps us absorb fats and vitamins from the digestive tract and delivers nutrients to our cells. The lymphatic system doesn't have a heart pumping it like our blood does. So to pump our lymph, we have to move our muscles and our joints. So we have to, again, I like the word movement more than exercise because exercise often feels like work. Like we don't want to do it, but we have to get it in. Whereas movement can be a million different things. Go out, you can dance, you can swim, you can run, you can play tennis, you can play pickleball. I have some friends on here, I think, that play pickleball, play basketball, whatever it is, go play with your kids at the playground. Whatever it is, you need to go move your body because we have to be pumping that lymph through our system. It's basically the cleanup crew of our body. It's like our little vacuum that finds the waste and carries it to our lymph nodes, which then filters out that waste out of our body. So we have to be supporting this detox pathway. But it also helps, movement also helps with our blood circulation, which back to oxygen, carries oxygen to our cells and carries out waste. So you're getting how important that is, right? In the food that we eat, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, the sun that we get, the sleep that we get, we have to get oxygen to our cells and we have to get waste out. It is of utmost importance to our overall health. And a sedentary lifestyle can often lead to chronic constipation. We wake up, we go sit at work, we come home, we sit down to eat, and then maybe we watch some TV, and then we get back in bed, and then we've just been sitting all day long. And there's a reason why they call it, it's the new smoking, a sedentary lifestyle. This lack of regular physical activity is a primary cause of chronic disease. It can lead to an increase in belly fat. It's indicative of our health. That belly fat is indicative of our health, and then it also increases our risk of type 2 diabetes and heart disease. Exercise can also help with digestive problems and eliminate stress, and also help with weight loss, of course. And if all that wasn't enough, exercise has been proven to boost sex drive because you get all that blood circulating and increased flexibility and just the cherry on top. So as I mentioned, find something you like. That's what is key. And exercise really it's an opportunity for us to retake the reins and move with intentionality and deliberation, and really to celebrate what our body is capable of doing. So my husband and I started a garden last year, and I learned that plants naturally deter pests when they get what they need. We don't need to spray something on them. Just give them what they need. We need to nourish the soil, nurture the soil with nutrients. We need to water them. They need to get sun. We're essentially plants that need exercise and Jesus. And just like plants, we need to get rid of the things that are choking out our growth. And when we prune things out of our life that we don't need, we make room for the growth that we're looking for and that we desire. We don't need to be sprayed with anything to ensure our health. We have to remember that no pill or shot can keep us healthy. That's not where health comes from. Only a focus on the foundations of health can give our body the opportunity to run as it was designed. So this week, I would encourage you to be mindful. Consider the amount of fresh air that you're getting. How much water are you drinking every day? What kind of food are you fueling your body with? How do you feel after you eat it? Are you moving your body? Are you getting out in the sunshine? Are you working up a sweat? What is your rest like? Are you going to bed and waking up at a consistent time? Is your sleep interrupted? What time are you waking up? What is your time with Jesus like? Are you talking to him? Are you taking time to meditate on his word? Are you taking your worries and your concerns and your fears and your gratitude to him instead of carrying that burden on your shoulders? It's not meant for you. How are your emotions? Do you feel steady? Do you feel like they're all over the place? Are you anxious or joyful? Are you consistent with your mood patterns? How does your skin look? How does the whites of your eyes look? How are your bowel movements going? Are you struggling? Are they consistent? Are they solid? Are they broken up into little particles? Are you dehydrated? Do you need to drink more water? And then even ask yourself, what am I reading? What am I learning about? What am I spending my time fueling myself, my mind, body, and spirit with? Because what you feed in, if it's crap and garbage, that's what we are going to produce out. So I'd encourage everyone who listened today, thanks for everyone who is here, to really put a focus back on their foundations of health. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. Thanks, Tracy, for having me and just to talk about these basics that are so crucial and important.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go through some of the questions, and also let them know where you are, Caroline, that you're taking new clients.
Yes. Yes, I am taking new clients. I'm located in Elwood City, Pennsylvania, which is about 40 minutes north of Pittsburgh. And you can visit terrainnaturalhealth.com, see my availability. I can do Zoom consultations or in person. And I'd love to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I loved your story about Scott. It's so great that you guys are still moving on. And, you know, the most powerful stories that we have as practitioners are me stories. Like, how did this help me? Because I think people realize that if they're coming to you, they're seeking things. But, you know, to have the experience, and as Jamie was saying earlier, sometimes they look at us and they think that our walks have always been perfect, you know, that we've always been healthy. And that's not the case. Most of the best practitioners I know have walked through something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I'll even just to add to that, you know, the protocol that we followed for Scott, I didn't even really mention it here, but there were a number of products that had herbs and nutraceuticals that we weren't getting through our food and wouldn't have known how to compile them all together, that were key in helping in that healing and the sealing of the gut lining, as well as the probiotics and the digestive enzymes. So that's something I could talk about too, if anyone wanted to reach out with some more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And to have a coach, you know, just to have somebody to kind of tailor it in. And then, you know, the application of that coaching is education. So as you and Scott moved through this, you learned and you were your own researchers and advocates. And I think we really have to get back to that. We have to take what people tell us, apply it to our life, and then do some more research. Yes. And that's what we advocate for as practitioners. You know, I usually start out and say, you know, this is not a negotiation. This is a recommendation, but I'm open to a conversation. You know, so people will be like, well, can I have that Diet Coke? No, you can't. Sorry, Diet Coke is out, but you know, GI Complete is in. It's the new Coke.
Right.
Right. So, but thank you. Great information. And we're looking forward to having you back at our next Wine or Wellness. Go see Caroline at Terrain Health in Elwood City. You will not regret it. I've talked to a lot of the people that, you know, she has worked with, and you just get great reviews. So thank you for doing all that you do.
Thanks, Tracy. You too.
All right, guys, stay tuned because we have our next speaker coming up, Dr. Judy Mikovits. Stay tuned.